80,000 people moved to Idaho in 1 year. The number one state they came from? California. That made Idaho the fastest growing state in the country. Looks like Idaho is about to be consumed by population growth. Well, it happened again. U.S. News just confirmed that Idaho, for the year 2019, was the fastest growing state in the country. That's the third straight year that has happened. That is just one of the many headlines drawing attention to the state of Idaho. Another example of such a headline came in January of 2019 on the show Tucker Carlson Tonight. On that show, Tucker did a documentary where he described the decline of San Francisco, California. Here's a clip.
Quality of life in the San Francisco Bay Area is so bad that a full 44% of residents say they're, quote, likely to move in the next few years. Since July of 2018, more than 40,000 Bay Area residents have fled, mostly to states like Texas and Idaho.
In addition to the headlines in periodicals and the headlines on cable news, there's also the synchronized timing of increase in social media. And it's there where you can find supposed local Idahoans complaining about the growth and blaming Californians for the increase in real estate prices and the increase in vehicular traffic in the cities. Add to the vocal locals those who don't even live in Idaho. To them, the sensationalized news that Idaho is growing gives them fuel to add to the fire. In their water cooler gossip or internet chat rooms, they're quick to predict the downfall of Idaho due to population growth. And they say things like, well, it's just a matter of time with all that new growth. Idaho's going to turn liberal, just like California, Washington, and Colorado. Yep, if you believe the hype, 13 out of 10 people are moving to Idaho from California, and all they want to do is turn Idaho into San Francisco. Heck, if one didn't know better, it'd be easy to assume, based on those headlines, that Idaho is experiencing population growth unlike anywhere else in the country, and that Idaho is destined to become a metropolitan liberal mess. But is the population growth going on in Idaho worthy of those sensational headlines? You see, my purpose here is not to minimize the growth that's happening in Idaho. Idaho is growing. It is well documented that Idaho has the fastest growing real estate market in the country, and that Idaho is the fastest growing state by percentage rate in the country. So no, we're not denying that Idaho is growing, but this video will give you a no-hype, proper perspective on the growth that is going on in Idaho. What is dominating the periodicals, the television articles, and the internet right now is what I call Idaho Monomania. Monomania is an obsessive preoccupation with one thing. Idaho Monomania is where people focus on the growth and growing pains that Idaho is having and tend to forget there's other states that are growing and going through growth pains as well. Monomania is similar to tunnel vision. Let me demonstrate. Right now, from your perspective, this is a beautiful face. But what if World News Tonight did a documentary on the scar above my right eye and told the story about how I put my eye too close to the scope on my hunting rifle when I shot a buck? What if they showed in slow motion the recoil of the 30-06 as the scope was thrust back into my face and split my eye wide open? Or what if 60 Minutes did an expose on the scar on the bottom of my chin and told the story how I, as a second grader, was chasing girls through the playground? And they interviewed a student who saw me slip on the gravel on the blacktop and testified that the first thing to hit the ground was my exploding chin. Or what if my neighbor tweeted, "Kory's face is a mess. I've seen his acne scars and I can't sleep at night now." What if your buddy, who you talked to at the water cooler at work, told you about the long, thick hairs that stick out in my eyebrows? And after being bombarded with all those details about my face, you would tend to think my face is pretty jacked, and would make it a point to cross the street if you ever saw me approaching you in downtown Coeur d'Alene. But my face is not the only face out there. If you were to do a similar research on my brother-in-law's face, let's say, you would soon find that my face is way more attractive. Idaho is the same. Let me demonstrate. Remember this? 80,000 people moved to Idaho in 1 year. The number one state they came from? California. That made Idaho the fastest growing state in the country. Looks like Idaho is about to be consumed by population growth. Just like my face, when we looked at just my face, it looked pretty jacked. And after seeing what you just saw about Idaho, you would tend to think that Idaho's pretty jacked. And if we stopped there, that would be called Idaho Monomania. However, when we look at Idaho in the context of other states, Idaho doesn't look so bad. In fact, in 2018, there were 30 other states that had more in-migration from other states than Idaho did. Let's look at the top 10. Number 10 was Pennsylvania with just over 253,000. Number 9 was New York with just over 254,000. Number 8 was Washington with just over 260,000. Number 7, Arizona with just over 273,000. Number 6, Virginia with just over 274,000. Number 5, Georgia with just over 274,000. Number 4, North Carolina with just over 318,000. Number 3 was California with just over 501,000. Number 2, Texas with 564,000 people migrating to it. And the number 1 state with the most in-migration from other states, Florida, with just over 587,000 people. The 10th most popular place for people to migrate from other states was Pennsylvania with 253,000. That's 3 times more people that moved to Pennsylvania from other states than did to Idaho. But you won't hear that on the news because that's not as sexy as Idaho. When we open our perspective to the facts and not just the hype, we soon see that 80,000 people moving to Idaho isn't as bad as it first sounded. And what about Californians moving to Idaho? After all, Tucker Carlson did say on national TV that Bay Area residents were fleeing to places like Idaho. So surely all the Californians are going to Idaho, right? Well, let's take a look and see what the census data shows. You can see in this chart that in 2018, Idaho had 21,018 Californians moved there. Of the top 10 places Californians moved to, Idaho was number 10. 9 other states had more in-migration from Californians than Idaho. Virginia had more Californians move there than Idaho did. And Texas, who was in the top spot, had 4 times the Californians migrate there than Idaho. Here's the breakdown of where people who moved to Idaho came from. The facts are that just over 1/4 of the people moving to Idaho were from California. That means 3/4 of the in-migrating people to Idaho were not even from California. And what about with Californians and all the population growth turning Idaho into San Francisco? Surely with all that new growth, it's just a matter of time, right? In fact, growth is not new to Idaho. You can see from this chart right here that since 1990, Idaho has been the 4th fastest growing state by percentage rate. Even with aggressive growth over the last 30 years, Idaho is still one of the least populated states in the country. And with the growth over the past 30 years, Idaho has grown into one of the most conservative states in the country, as documented by Gallup here. And a look at Idaho election results since 1990 shows the state is becoming more conservative with all the population growth. Evidence of the growing conservative culture can also be seen in recent legislation. Here are 2 big examples. Lower taxes. In 2018, Idaho Governor Butch Otter signed House Bill 463. House Bill 463 reduced both personal and corporate income tax rates. In addition to lowering taxes recently, Idaho also strengthened its Second Amendment laws. In 2019, Governor Little signed into law HB 206, which allows any resident over the age of 18 to carry a concealed weapon throughout the state, whether within city limits or outside city limits, without a permit. In 2019, Guns and Ammo magazine recognized Idaho as the 2nd best state for gun ownership. So, all the predictions of Californians and population growth turning Idaho into San Francisco, yeah, no. So, in closing, Idaho is growing. And in recent times, her growth has caused many to be preoccupied with her blemishes and scars. But those who fixate and obsess on her blemishes and don't learn her true character may just well pass up a dance with the prettiest girl on the dance floor. That's it for now, guys. Don't forget to subscribe and like the video if you liked it. We'll keep this content coming at you. And don't forget, you can get more information about North Idaho at our website, livebetterinnnorthidaho.com. Bye now.